aspect and the actual taste of it all, you know, whenever you go to a grocery store and sometimes you buy fruit and there's no taste?
None.
There's reasons for that. And that's because one, you have no idea where it's come from. It could be 6 months old, transported from South America or elsewhere. Two, the farm itself just not properly cared for. And so that reflects on the taste and nutrients of the food.
All right, guys, got Ryan here. Make milk raw again. Let's go.
Yes, sir.
It's been a while since that was a normal beverage in America.
Yeah. The biggest thing I really wanted to talk about in the context of raw milk, because that's such a polarizing topic, especially on social media. It's interesting whenever I post on my Instagram about raw milk, you'll get comments that are loving it, or the complete opposite end to where they're just telling you that you're going to kill everybody and it just should be illegal. But there's one protein that I see that's not talked about a lot, and that's lactoferrin. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't.
So it's an incredible protein found in raw dairy, but then also in breast milk too. But one of the topics that are talked about, just raw dairy and dairy in general, is immune health, because that's some of the claims with raw dairy, that it helps with your immune system. But then on the flip side, people say there's no benefits at all. Lactoferrin is a huge protein that really helps build that up. So I know there's all these phrases, but it's really true with lactoferrin. It's antimicrobial, antifungal, anti-cancer, anti-aging. It's huge with your white blood cells, so it actually helps boost the production of that. It binds to iron, and so, or not, let me back that up. It binds to pathogens within your body, so it stops the spread of it. So that also plays to why it helps with your immune system. But then also for folks with low iron or anemia, lactoferrin is really good for that too. And so when you break down the actual components of raw dairy, there are so many like that to where it truly does build your immune system. And that's why we deserve the right as humans and Americans to choose between that. Because that's not my argument is we should legalize raw milk and then make pasteurized milk illegal. No, we should just have the freedom to choose between the two. And right now, we really don't. I mean, in Nevada, it's very, very tough to get.
Banned here. Yeah,
it's banned here. So if you were to get it, you're pretty much doing it just behind closed doors, essentially. Yeah. And that's just so ridiculous. But fortunately, more and more states are starting to open up to that. North Carolina, there's so many other states that have bills that they're in the middle of pushing, rather to be actually starting to sell milk, but has to be labeled as pet food milk, or you can get it straight from the farm itself. Or there's one to where North Carolina, they're pushing it for sales in grocery stores or farmers markets. So the good thing is it's starting to really open up, but yeah, it's just funny to see how polarizing that really is.
Well, the milk industry is crazy, because when I was growing up, it was just milk. Now you got cashew milk, macadamia milk, almond milk. It's nuts. There's a new one launching every couple of years, it feels like.
There's banana milk.
There is?
Yeah.
How is that even a milk?
That's the thing. It just completely changes the definition of what milk is.
Yeah, that doesn't even make sense.
No.
Like, where are they getting liquid out of the banana? Are they just smushing it up?
I actually have never looked into that, but I've seen it at stores to where it says banana milk.
That's crazy, man. And then you look into the health behind some of these milks, and it's actually, some of them are actually bad for you. Like,
well, yeah, and especially with pasteurized milk too, because that's another thing is you don't know where that's coming from the dairy standpoint. A lot of times they don't even care about the quality of the milk because they know it's going to be heated up anyways. And then lastly, another funny part about raw dairies is people will say that it causes all of these diseases and hospitalizations. People always talk about E. coli and whatnot. If you look up the largest salmonella outbreak in U.S. history was in the 80s. There was around 200,000 cases and there was around 20 to 25 deaths. It was caused by pasteurized milk. And so that's another thing that's just interesting too, is the E. coli and all these other bacterial infections that folks talk about with raw dairy happens all the time with produce too. When you think about especially vegetables, that happens all the time with all of these things, but that just seems to not be talked about in this conversation. And so above all else, that's why I try to tell people, despite what everything from the media, the government institutions tell you, go visit a farm or a ranch and talk to the people actually doing that and see for yourself and compare that versus what, again, everybody's telling you, and make informed decisions through all of that. Because to me, the root of all of our problems, not just our health problems, but all of our problems, is our disconnection from our food. Because I'm not saying that fixing your diet will fix everything, but when talking about MAHA and how all of this is huge, America needs to have a massive paradigm shift if
Shout out to today's sponsor, Notion. Are you spending more time managing your emails than actually running your business? Or worse, have you missed something important because it got lost in the chaos of your inbox? Email hasn't evolved in decades and it shows, but now Notion Mail is changing the game. It's the inbox that links you so you can spend more time building, not emailing. Notion Mail uses AI that learns what matters to you. It can organize your inbox, label messages, draft replies, and even schedule meetings. No manual sorting is needed. If you need to stay focused, you could customize your inbox view by topic, urgency, or sender, whatever keeps you on track. You could fly through repetitive replies with one-click snippets like intros, follow-ups, or thank you notes, even with attachments and scheduling links. Already a Notion user, Notion Mail integrates directly with your docs using them for context, so everything works together in one place. Get Notion Mail for free right now at notion.com/DSH. That's all lowercase, notion.com/DSH. Again, that's notion.com/DSH. Try the inbox that thinks like you.
we want to have a truly healthy country because we've outsourced all of our responsibilities. When you think about, especially post-COVID, that really just kind of broke our society in a lot of ways to where a lot of people, it just siloed ourselves a lot. But then through just hyper specializations in America, because capitalism goes towards just hyper efficiency and whatnot, because that's huge for agriculture too. But then you just go into really specializations to now where people are getting DoorDash and they're not growing their own food. They're not even buying their own food and they're not even cooking their own food. And so I can just give many examples of that. And that's just one particular example. But then you think about, like, say Ozempic too. We try to just cheat everything. We want it quick, quick, quick. I actually saw a tweet a couple of days ago how someone bought potatoes to plant. She genuinely expected it to be grown the next day, and she didn't realize that she was gonna have to wait a couple months. And then that got like 30 or 40,000 likes on Twitter. And I was reading the comments, and there's so many other comments sharing how they had similar experiences where they bought some type of food they wanted to grow and they had no idea that they had to wait for that. And even just that, it's sad. Because I commented on it, I wasn't trying to dunk on that person, but that's just kind of where we're at in a society now, to where we expect everything to just solve itself quick. And that's why we have to be patient, especially with our health and food, if we want it to fix long-term.
Yeah.
And that's, again, to me, it's going to require a paradigm shift because of just how we think on everything now in America.
And I mean, you have an autoimmune condition. If you were eating out all the time, it probably would make it even worse.
Oh yeah. That's another thing too, is whenever you're sick, like the one thing you notice whenever you say you can't breathe through one nostril, that's all you focus on. Like, I can't wait to start breathing again normally. And whenever you're sick, that's all you really think about too. And when you think about America, most people are sick. And that's why whenever talking about COVID, how over 1 million Americans died from that, to me, there's no surprise with that. Whenever you take 75% of this country is overweight, severely obese, morbidly obese, and you have something like COVID come in, that's going to wipe out a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that we're just not honest with ourselves either. Because that was my whole problem with the fat acceptance movement. Because I was severely overweight and unhealthy growing up and had really bad issues with self-confidence and image and all that. But if we're not being honest with one another and genuinely believing that you could be severely overweight and still be healthy, that's where we're at in society now. That's why I say we're not in a society, but a soy-society.
I love that. Body positivity movement.
Yeah.
That was a rough one. I think even the people that were part of that know they messed up now.
Well, look at Lizzo. She stopped making music, but then she has lost so much weight and she looks so much better.
That's
and
good.
I hope that can really set an example for others too. Because she was getting bullied a lot online, and I have a feeling that pushed her. But again, you cannot be in the shape that she was in and still be considered healthy.
No, man. How did you cut the pounds off? Did you do it naturally?
Yeah. So this was junior year of high school because, again, my diet growing up was after school, I'd eat Cheetos, 2 sodas a day.
Damn.
Before school, I would be eating Pop-Tarts and cereal. Obviously, lunches weren't that great. And so, awful. I had horrible gut issues my upbringing too. I remember getting an ultrasound on my gut and they couldn't figure out anything. And then I remember I took out gluten and that solved a lot of my gut issues pretty much overnight. And then that kind of got the wheel spinning in my head too. But the biggest thing was going outside. So I joined track and just was outside running a lot. And then that became my obsession. I always played sports and whatnot, but my diet was so shit. But even then, looking back, I just outran my diet. So if I stopped running and really focusing on that, the pounds would have just come back. And again, that's my biggest issue too with the whole Ozempic thing is you're not addressing the root cause. So say you take Ozempic and you lose 100, 150 pounds, but you still have those awful habits and whatever trauma that you might have faced, and you don't address that. And so you still have those awful habits, and that's not going to help you in the long run at all.
I'm not really a fan of it either.
No.
And any time where you're losing or gaining something super fast, like it's not sustainable for your body. You know what I mean? What was your event in track?
So I did long distance. I just went straight into it all just to get in shape for tennis. So I did the 1 and 2 mile. Absolutely embarrassed myself.
What was your best mile?
5:40.
That's actually pretty good.
But when you compare that to everybody else.
Yeah. Those track kids are fast.
And man. I had a good, the school I went to was good for track. And so they were just straight killers. But I also remember too, going back to just your mindset. I remember I was in the stands talking to one of my friend's dads, and I just kind of felt embarrassed, but he was just like, dude, I'm sitting up here and you're running. And that kind of, even that was just like so simple that there's so many people not doing the work. And even though I'm getting absolutely decimated and laughed by people, I'm still running. And so just that little mental shift too could help too, that not comparing yourself to everybody else, just comparing yourself to how you were the day before could really pay dividends, because it did for me.
Yeah. Did you go vegan for a period of time?
2.5 years.
Wow. Were you really weak when you were on that diet?
Yeah, but that's also because, so that was towards the tail end of that, I was taking care of my brother. So the whole reason why I started my brand Regenerative and why I talk on raw dairy and agriculture overall was what I've gone through with my family. So at the start of the pandemic, pretty much right at the beginning, I get news that my older brother has stage 3 colon cancer. And so obviously that just, my whole world stopped with that, because up until that point, I had a fairly straightforward, easy life. No major health, family stuff like that. But then fast forward to September of 2020, we're told it's in remission. So great. I go back home, we celebrate. 2 months later, my dad calls me. Not only did his cancer come back, but it had advanced to stage 4. So in that regard, looking back, I have no idea what went wrong from the healthcare, how they messed that up so badly. But then the first 6 months of 2021, I go back home to be his caretaker and watched the chemo, opioids, and all the treatments literally torture him alive. He was being tortured alive for 6 months, and it was psychological torture to watch. On top of that, I was taking care of my mother too, because she was forced to retire from her health in 2019, or from her teaching career because of her health in 2019. So she had diabetes. She was on medication for that. She had shingles and gout, anxiety, depression, medication for that. She had coronary artery disease, so most common heart disease. Her kidney and livers were both failing, and she needed transplants for both. But because of her heart condition, she was deemed inoperable. And then in total, she had 14 liters of fluid drained from her lungs. So just think of like 14 water bottles.
Oh my God.
14 of these in total from her lungs.
Holy crap.
And so she was massively suffering too. And yeah, just seeing all of that, the last 2.5 months of my brother's life was spent in the hospital. So then I really saw what that was like, how hellish it was for everybody involved, not just for me and my brother and family, but it's just set up for failure on everybody. And again, that's why from all of that, and then being vegan, and then actually working with farmers and seeing all this, because my brother ended up passing away 3 days before his 33rd birthday. And then my mom eventually passed away a year and a half later on the day I launched my business. And so I really saw and felt just how awful you can go 50 years feeling okay, but your health, if you're not taking care of yourself, can drop in the blink of an eye. Because that's what happened to me again. My life was fine, and then I'm talking to you after losing 2/3 of my family in the blink of an eye. And so after my brother died, I come from a tech background, used to work for IBM, and so I quit that immediately and withdrew my 401k, bet on myself thinking that I'm just going to figure out my life. Had no idea what that meant or where that would lead me to. But then Twitter, I started learning about agriculture. And that was my light bulb moment of, holy shit, I've been so disconnected from my food, had never gone to a farm or ranch, had never spoken to a farmer or rancher. And so I had this big road trip planned, initially just to travel, but then that changed to visiting farms and ranches. And I remember going to a ranch in Colorado, and it was a huge processing day to where they were just processing a lot of chickens. And I got to see just the experience of all that. The farm owner, he did this ceremony on all the chickens, just giving them thanks for all of that. I got to see the beautiful farmland that the chickens got to roam around, just surrounded by the Colorado Rockies. And then I actually saw them, actually processed, where he took its life, and then I would help defeather it all and cut it up and whatnot. And then I got to take a bird home for volunteering to help out. And then I remember taking that and grilling out with friends, and they just commented how much better that tasted too, because it was properly raised and there's no vaccines or antibiotics or any garbage feed or any of that. And so I realized that there's absolutely something here that I need to help out. How can I help out the farmers and ranchers and get folks to really wake up? Because that's the biggest part with everything, is not just education, but awareness. Most people do not understand where we're at from a food standpoint, from agriculture standpoint, or how decimated our farmers and ranchers have gotten for so long, and especially now. So I worked on the farm in the fall of 2022, and that was incredible. I was in rural Pennsylvania, surrounded by the Amish.
Amish farm?
No, but neighbors were the Amish, and we bartered with them and traded for their butter and chocolate milk, and it was the best raw butter and chocolate milk to this day I've ever had.
I bet. I've never had raw butter, actually. You can't buy that in the grocery stores.
No. And so that's another thing, man. It's just the quality of it too, because it's super yellow, super rich. The taste of it is insane. Like, that's what the food aspect and the actual taste of it all, whenever you go to a grocery store and sometimes you buy fruit and there's no taste.
None.
That there's reasons for that. And that's because, one, you have no idea where it's come from. It could be 6 months old, transported from South America or elsewhere. Two, the farm itself just not properly cared for. And so that reflects on the taste and nutrients of the food. So
100%. I remember going to Wegmans as a kid, because I grew up on the East Coast, and eating strawberries and fruit, and it tasted amazing. Now when I get fruit, nothing.
Yeah, it's wild. There's sometimes I've bought pomegranate and I took one bite and there's literally no taste at all. You're just chewing nothing.
Yeah. Same with dragon fruit. Dragon fruit has no taste anymore.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So through all of that, I started sharing that online and shared my story, and people really latched onto that. So I realized that people were also waking up to everything at post-COVID and all of that, and realizing, where the hell have I been my whole life of my food, not connected to that at all. And so through all of this though, my health was still really bad, obviously, because I was taking care of my brother. I mean, once he died and I went back to Austin, I weighed, I believe, 122 pounds.
Damn.
Because I barely ate. I was also vegan then. And obviously all the stress of everything, I just destroyed my body and whatnot. And so I came back, and then this is where I had my own health hell of a journey, because no doctor could figure it out at all. They kept telling me I had an over acidic stomach, but it was actually the inverse. I had very low stomach acid, which can happen a lot for ex-vegans whenever they switch back. I started learning a lot on Twitter too, realizing I was wrong about veganism, that animal protein has been at the center of our diet our whole life, or our whole existence. That's how it will always be too. But then I started really thinking about the moral ethics standpoint of it all. Because that's the one thing vegans are right about when talking about, factory farming, and a lot of the videos they've shared online, there's a lot of truth to that.
I agree with that part of it.
Yeah. And most people are starting to agree with that too. And so once I started actually talking to the real farmers that aren't doing any of that, I realized, how can I help bring them to the limelight, and then also bring the consumers over and realize that there's a better alternative and path. And so we have to support them, because this industry overall, it's already insanely tough for farmers and ranchers to get by, even make a profit at all.
Because they're competing with big food.
Yeah. And then in pretty much every part of it, even like the processing, has just been completely captured. And who loses it out? The people that are actually doing it all. And so that's kind of why I've gone about what I've done with my brand, is going from an educational focus. I talk with the farmers and ranchers and all the other folks involved in agriculture, because there's a lot that it takes to do. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that, because it's just fascinating to how we've gotten where we're at in our culture worldwide, but in America, because agriculture the 1800s, you think about the bison and cattle and the massive cattle drives. That was huge. And now, again, most people have never been to a farm or ranch. There's people that genuinely believe food comes from a grocery store. And all of that to me is because we're just so disconnected from the very thing that sustain us.
And it's only getting worse now with these grocery delivery apps. People won't even be going to grocery stores anymore. You know?
And you can even get, they partnered up with Klarna, I believe, DoorDash did. So you can even get payment plans for that.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Damn, that's nuts. Yeah, Amish farms are amazing. Every time I find a good one, they get raided. So I have to constantly switch suppliers. Another big problem is the shipping cost is so much to the West Coast because most of them are on the East Coast, right?
Yeah.
So I have to pay like $200 for shipping. So if I am going to order, it's going to be like a huge order.
Did you bought it from Amos Miller's farm?
I think so. I might have. Because I like raw cheese too. So that one sounds familiar.
Yeah. Well, they're one of the ones that got really majorly raided in Pennsylvania.
Really?
And pretty much the biggest reason why the Amish came out in record numbers in Pennsylvania to vote, because they just want to be left alone. And they were just getting destroyed by the government.
Has that stopped since the new administration came in?
Overall, it seems to be trending that way. So actually yesterday, there was a major case that happened in South Dakota they're the Maud family. And they've had this piece of property in their family line for, I believe, 5 generations, since before the 1910s. And then last year, with the National Forest Service, this anonymous hunter made a complaint about their fence line, claiming that it was in conjunction with the National Forest Service and that they needed to adhere to that. But the thing is, the Maud family, again, has had this, their whole, I think, 5th or 6th generation ranchers. They've complied with everything that's need be, have not done anything wrong. And then all of a sudden, they had this. In the first 90 days from that complaint, by the end of that, they had people show up at their doors in tactical gear. They then put a gag order on them. Each husband and wife were facing up to 10 years in prison.
Wow.
$250,000 in fines. And this was just a massive ordeal to where the hearing was actually happening in April. Fortunately, yesterday the case was dismissed, and the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, actually made a post about it. And this is why I'm also going from awareness and educational, because I truly believe how that happened was people just were sharing that like crazy online, because there were so many other incredible folks doing work on the back end to really help drive that. But I think about all the families that's happened to where they didn't get the help, and you just get screwed. I mean, these families, again, they're just doing ranching. They just want to support their families, their communities, be outside. But yet this family almost faced 10 years in prison.
I feel bad for them because they also have no voice, because the big thing about the Amish is they don't have social media, right?
Yeah.
Or technology.
Oh, so sorry, this example, they're not Amish, but I'm just trying to showcase that the farmers and ranchers get attacked at every front from a freedom standpoint, and they don't have a voice. So that's actually why, if you go to my bio on Twitter, it's being the microphone for farmers and ranchers, because it's just been completely stripped away. And then most people, especially in living in major cities, it's out of sight, out of mind. So you have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, because there's probably so many cases we don't even know about because they get raided or whatever, and then they don't know who to tell.
Yeah.
They got no voice.
Yep. And this is happening globally. So on my podcast, I had she's an ostrich research farmer in Canada. And it's still ongoing, and they still might lose the whole flock, but they were doing research on the yolks of the ostrich eggs, and there's a lot of COVID antibody properties.
Oh my gosh.
And she was working with a research scientist in Japan, and then all of a sudden they got an email from that research facility that they can no longer work together. She had no idea why. And then the scientist wouldn't explain anything, probably because there's pressure from everything. And then they essentially got raided too. And then she was saying how whenever folks showed up too, they were wearing the wrong hazmat gear. It's just all facade. And so a lot of people too, with this whole avian flu thing, they go through it from a PCR test, which is very fraudulent, because you can essentially, if you do enough PCR tests, you're going to get the results you want. And that's how they go about it with the avian flu in America. But this happened with her in Canada too, where they just did a boatload of PCR tests, got what they wanted. And now they're just trying to seize the whole operation, kill all of the ostriches.
Wow.
And
hide it all.
Yeah. And fortunately, they've pushed back the hearing again because of social media. If they didn't have that, it would have ended already months ago. And so that's why I try to tell folks, A, shake the hand that feeds you, but then also share this information out, because farmers and ranchers need literally all hands on deck with this.
That is super concerning because, first of all, eggs are like a staple in a lot of countries. So if the vaccines are getting inside of the eggs and people are consuming them, that's really concerning, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that is terrifying. I mean, there's people saying it gets in the meat when you vaccine a cow and then you eat the steak. I don't know if that's true or not.
It is. And then also grocery store meat, you have no idea where that's from. You have no idea how many different types of cows are in that, where the environments they came from. And so when, you can still buy American beef that's been imported. And so consumers have no idea about that.
They're probably importing it. If from a business point of view, it would probably save them a ton of money, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that, but money.
I mean, money is always going to be the root of it, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's crazy. So even if it says made in America on the beef packaging.
Yeah, if it's a product of USA, it can technically be from somewhere else that they imported.
It's crazy.
And so you think you might be supporting the farmers and ranchers, but you're not. And so that's why there's so many resources out there too. That's why going back to saying we've just outsourced responsibility, you could literally just Google farms and ranchers near me, or I share resources constantly to where there's 10, 20 websites now with farm maps to find farmers and ranchers, homesteads, raw milk. I mean, there's regenerativefarmersofamerica.com, fromthefarm.org, beefmaps.com, eatwild.com. For raw milk, you can go to getrawmilk.com. And then I think it's realmilk.com.
I think Seed Oil Scout is adding a section too.
Yeah. And Seed Oil Scout too is great for that.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of resources. It's just, you got to do some type of work. And especially, I say this a lot too, if you're a parent or want to be a parent, because I hear this all the time too. Like, I would do anything for my parents or for my kids, even die for them. But why aren't you living for them? Because I think about my family. I mean, my mom's passed away and I want to have a ranch and raise a family. And it sucks to think about that my mom's not going to be there to see her grandkids, because she wanted that a lot. And I see just where we're at as a society now too. I went to the March Madness basketball games last year or last month, and it felt like such a bread and circus because most people could not even walk up the stairs. Like, it was so jarring how unhealthy majority of the people were there, not being able to even walk up the stairs. And I'm just thinking, you can still technically be alive when you're 70, but if you can't even walk, you're not even going to be able to play with your grandchildren.
Health span versus lifespan, that debate, right?
Yes.
Like, why would you want to live to 80 if you're not healthy?
Yeah. I mean, that kind of goes back. You kind of hear sometimes whenever there's people like in their 90s, they just want to die and just, yeah. Yeah.
No, man, it's rough. Like, I want to live out some good years. Like, it doesn't have to be 100, but if my, health span is close to my lifespan as possible, that's my goal.
Absolutely.
Damn, that's crazy. That's sad to hear though. People can't even walk up the stairs these days.
It felt like the whole bread and circus, because then I remember there was like a Capital One, like blimp that was just dropping coupons and everyone just had their hands up, and I'm just sitting there just having like an out of body experience, thinking that that's where we're at as a society.
America's interesting because we always win the Olympics, but we definitely have the unhealthiest people too. It's like both ends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you really got to find the right people to associate with if you're living here.
And that's one of the things I did actually after my brother died, was thinking about who I would surround myself with. And that does play a huge role in really helping you go through anything. Because I remember I always, again, had such low self-confidence in myself. And so it's huge to have good friends that really believe in you and your true potential, because say that this is my friend's belief in me, and then this is my belief in myself. And through all the events, like, this would change a lot. But then as I kept building my business and just everything else and not giving up, this eventually got to where I surpassed my friend's belief in myself. And now that's never going to go down. Mm-hmm. Like, I will always have that. And that's because of the friends I surround myself with. It's insanely important.
Super important. So do you do all your shopping with the local farms now? You don't go to the grocery stores anymore?
I do go to grocery stores still too, but I support my local farmers and ranchers. Like in Austin, there's 2 people that I buy pork and beef and eggs and chicken and turkey. It's the taste is so much better. Like
I'd love to eat pork again, man. I stopped eating it because of all the horror videos I saw of what they feed the pigs.
Yeah, and that's very tough too, because I didn't eat pork for a very, very long time until I actually had properly pasture raised. And not only did I not feel like shit afterwards, but the taste was just so good. And so I have Hashimoto's, and the very vitamin that I really need is vitamin B1. And actually pork is one of the best sources for that too. And so that's also why we need to treat food as medicine. And we really think about it as food as pleasure too, in a lot of ways. And that's very hard to break. And that's because a lot of the food in grocery stores have been chemically designed and changed to make us addicted.
GMO, right?
That and just all of the thousands of chemicals that are allowed here.
They just banned food dyes at least. That's a good first step.
That is a good first step. I'm hoping that really snowballs into a lot of other chemicals, because that's what I try to think about with so I had a really bad just relationship with my food. And that was the one thing after my brother died, was just eating a lot of junk food. And it's very, very, very tough to break. And that's why I also believe, like going back to the Ozempic stuff, a lot of people, in my opinion, they emotionally eat for some trauma that they never overcame. And so that's why giving grace to that, but also trying to understand that the foods they're eating is just worsening everything, because it worsens your gut, destroys your insides. And so that reflects the gut-brain barrier. That is very true. And then you go outside and you drive around, everything's marketed towards you. You can smell whatever fast food places you're driving past. And then you've got DoorDash, and you've got hot and ready meals. You've got carry out. It's very, very easy, but then to get all that food, which makes it very difficult to change.
Yeah.
And so that's why, to me, again, it's going to a farm and ranch, seeing that connection, and then actually tasting that food. Because we've also associated with healthy food equals not tasty. It's such bullshit.
Yeah, it's definitely not true. Maybe at first, because your body's just not used to it. Like your gut bacteria, they're like, what is that? But over time, you start craving it. Like, I don't even like candy anymore. I used to love candy. Really? I like I'll pick fruit over candy any day. You know, my body just likes that more. But at first, I would never pick candy or fruit over candy when I was a kid.
Well, that's why it's nature's candy, in my opinion. Yeah. That with some honey too, it's so good. Yeah. And honey too, that's another thing there's so much nuance in every industry and aspect. I don't know if it's just from schooling, but America's, it's our black and white thinking. There's nuance in everything. So now we also associate with everything sugar is bad. So people don't eat fruit or honey, but that's just not the case at all. There's so many incredible benefits, and especially with honey, that
the raw honey, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's some BS processed one they sell now, but
yeah, and then they heat that up too, which denatures it, similar to raw dairy too. So yeah.
Yeah, honey, do you buy like the raw honeycomb, or what do you buy?
That too. Raw honeycomb is awesome. And then raw royal jelly, it kind of has, I'm trying to even explain the taste of that, because it's a super strong taste and you don't have to have a lot of that. But the benefits of just the bees are just insane overall. Yeah. And especially just raw honey. Because I also, whenever my brother was in the hospital, he had a huge wound in his gut from just all the surgeries. And they would use what was called meta honey. So there was just properties of honey in that, because there's wound healing properties to that. And so we've got to protect the bees as well. And that goes to how we go about farming and ranching.
Have you seen how 5G towers affect bees?
No.
You haven't seen that?
But I saw in Vegas here the 5G towers that look like trees.
That's scary. I did not know that was in Vegas. I've seen that photo.
I saw that here.
That's on the strip probably then.
I'm trying to remember where I saw it, but yeah, it was around here. Because that's the first time I've ever seen that in person.
They're being sleek with it these days, man, because people know, or some people at least know, that they're not the best.
Yep. And that's another thing too. There's just so many modern toxins that we're not aware of at all.
Yeah. But basically with the towers and the bees don't know how to get back to their hive when they're too close to a 5G tower.
That makes sense.
So that messes up the whole food chain supply.
Yeah.
Crazy, right? Damn. And that's only on 10% activation. They could still fire these things up even more. Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast.
That's really mind blowing then, actually, because then they can just use that as a tool to.
Yep. And then that'll get deleted if we talk about it. But yeah, we at least have to start planting seeds in people, not be walking around oblivious to what's actually going on.
Yeah, we've got to really stop outsourcing our responsibility on everything. Yeah. Take really extreme ownership. And that's why also thinking about it's a paradigm shift. You have to think long-term too. If you want to heal yourself, that's going to take time. But then also when you think of having children, epigenetics is a real thing. And so if you want to produce healthy babies, you've got to be healthy yourself.
100%. I go to the farmer's market, as much as possible. I'd rather support them than Tyson or one of the big food companies,
Yeah, absolutely. Tyson, they are pretty much feudal lords, modern day feudal lords.
Man, the whole chicken industry, if you look at it, it's like 4 players, right?
So every industry is pretty much captured, and cattle is the last one that they're really, really going after.
They don't have that one yet?
In some ways, yeah. I mean, to me, that's also partly why maybe with the Maud family, because they're cattle ranchers. But it's just really hard to make a profit in cattle industry now too, because of the processing facilities and how that's a huge bottleneck. I believe in the last 5 years, we've lost nearly 110,000 ranches.
Damn.
And so again, beef and cattle, when you think Texas, you think of the cattle drives. When you think of America too, it's just built by beef and pork, but beef. And now that's really dwindling too.
Wow, yeah, we're like known for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those numbers are going down?
Yeah.
Is it because we can't keep up with demand, or what's going on, you think?
So the processing facilities, so going back to when I was traveling, when I visited this ranch in Colorado, this was in, I believe, June or July. And I went with him to a processing facility to schedule some dates for September of the next year. What? That was the earliest he could get in to have his cows processed.
Holy crap.
That's because there's not a whole lot of processing facilities. And if you want to open up a new one, USDA plays favorites, and that's just from money too with the big players. So then all the bigger producers then can get in earlier. They control all of that. So it's just throughout time with this industry, it's just been completely consolidated. So just the big powerful players can really influence all of that. And that's what's happening with the cattle industry, like it happened with chicken, pork. It's really sad because, I mean, I talk to them every single day. I talk to them on my podcast. They are salt of the earth people, just so incredible. Obviously, there's people in this industry that are bad players and bad actors, but that happens in every industry.
Yep.
Overall, I mean, it literally saved my life after what I've gone through. I worked on the farm. I think about that farm every single day, that family that lives there, raising their children. It's the life I want to give my future children. And also, whenever I think about from like a fulfillment aspect, there's so many people in, say, big cities that, they might have a fairly good paying job and they might have some social life, but they inside still don't feel fulfilled at all. This could be an avenue for that. You might not be making nearly as much money, but I was outside the whole day, every day, out in nature, eating the best food possible. And to me, that was just, I think about that every single day.
Is that when you felt the best, like mentally?
Yeah.
I could see that.
Definitely. And because you also see the connection of, to me, God, because I mean, that's a different conversation, but I see God's work at play in all of that, how it's just one major system to where it goes taking care of beneath the ground, which then shows above ground, and then with the animals and the crops, which then goes with the surrounding nature, and then ultimately to us and our health too. And so there's just this big cycle going on. And whenever you think from like a conventional and then like regenerative, because I know you had Kevin from Perennial Pastures on, conventional is pretty much against nature in a lot of ways. And then how it responds, well, we have degraded soils, we have monocropping, going back to the taste of food, and then nutrient density, all of that plays. And then you go with regenerative agriculture, which is more in alignment with how nature operates. What happens with that? You start rebuilding the soil, rebuilding nutrient density, and then you have more better tasting food. And so that's why, above all else, I will keep preaching, go visit a farm and ranch, take your family out there, watch your kids, see how they interact with everybody. It's hard to put into words how awesome it is.
Yeah, I adopted both my dogs from the Amish, man. It was such a pure experience seeing that lifestyle.
Yeah.
And they have no mental health issues. They just live off the lay of the land. And what I like too is they barter. So like we just started gardening at my house, and I want to start trading some stuff, man. We got some jalapenos, some onions.
I love that.
I want to live in a culture of that. Bring that back again, dude.
That was the cool thing, because farmers markets, from the farmer standpoint, can be very tough, but it is cool to barter with the neighboring tents whenever the farmers market ended, because that's what we would do, and there'd be some Mennonites, and it was just really cool it felt very communal.
Yeah.
And that's another thing, is we're we don't have that third, I'm blanking, because you have your home and then you go to like your job or school, but then we don't have that third option anymore.
We don't have community anymore.
Yeah. And so community is just gone. And
especially in major cities, like it's non-existent.
And rural too. Rural has been completely decimated in a lot of ways too overall. And so it's just, I have a lot of hope, and I truly believe that the best days are ahead, but it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of awareness and education.
Absolutely, man. Where can people watch your stuff and stay updated on this?
So on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok, The Regenaissance. My website is just theregenaissance.co. There, I also have apparel, all natural fibers outside of the trucker hats, because that was another thing too, is learning about natural fibers versus polyester and all the synthetic fibers.
Yeah, I stopped wearing polyester.
But then also I have podcasts, the Regenaissance podcasts, and there again I talk with farmers and ranchers and all the other folks that encompass agriculture. And then on YouTube, because I'm going to be doing a lot of media moving forward. I have a lot planned for these next 2 years, and so just be on the lookout for that.
I love it.
It'll be cool.
Stay tuned, guys. Check them out in the video below. See you next time.